There was a story that came out today that really includes everything the Trump administration has to offer: incompetence, cruelty in fighting waste, apparent corruption. This one really has it all. According to new reporting from the New York Times, Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security has spent nearly $500 million on a no-bid contract to buy 10 used jets as part of Trump's mass deportation project. But since acquiring the fleet, the department has barely used the planes, not for deportations and not for anything else. 3 of the 10 planes are also luxury jets, and apparently because they didn't know what else to do with them, the department tried to loan or lease 2 of them to other agencies just months after they acquired them, including one, of course, for FBI Director Kash Patel, despite the fact that the FBI already has its own jets to support the director's travel. The other 7 planes are passenger jets, and the Trump administration has left those planes parked at an airport in Louisiana for months at a time. Now, why would they do that, you ask? I have the same question. Well, according to an internal government document obtained by the Times, it's because the agency didn't have the staff necessary to operate them. Bang up job, everyone. Now, making matters worse, federal law generally requires government agencies to seek competing bids for contracts for good reason, not no-bid contracts, to ensure that they get the best deal possible for taxpayers. But in this case, Trump's DHS invoked an exemption that has historically been used during natural disasters, war, and the coronavirus pandemic. You know, actual urgent emergencies. A Times analysis of federal data shows that invoking this exception has become a regular occurrence for Trump's DHS. In fact, the exemption accounts for nearly 2/3 of the total money the agency has spent on contracts this year. And to just give you a sense of how egregious that is, in 2024 under Biden, it was less than 1%. And precisely because these are pricier emergency no-bid contracts, it actually matters who is getting them. I mean, this particular DHS contract happened to go to a company which had previously not held a federal contract. But that company's chairman, of course, happened to donate to a political committee supporting former Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. What a freaking shocker. But of course, the company spokesman said the chairman was unaware that the political committee was tied to Kristi Noem. Sure. Now, regardless, it seems even Trump administration officials know how bad this all looks, and they are pointing fingers at each other in quite a soap opera showdown. The Department of Homeland Security, now run, of course, by Mark Wayne Mullen, said in a statement to the Times that, quote, the contract was made and approved by department leadership before Secretary Mullen was sworn in. But Kristi Noem isn't having it. A spokesperson for her told the Times the purchase was finalized under current leadership, which appears to be technically true. I mean, records show the contract increased by $303 million on the day that Mullen was sworn in as secretary. Look, at the end of the day, all of this completely incompetent management and wasteful spending was done in an effort to achieve the fever dream goal of the Stephen Miller wing of the Trump White House, massively increasing deportations. But as one former acting ICE director told the New York Times, if you asked me to write a list of the things ICE needed to increase the number of deportations, buying its own fleet of airplanes would absolutely not make the top 10. So it seems their incompetence may be interrupting their darker Stephen Miller-esque plans. And that official who gave that great quote joins me now. John Sandvik is a former acting director of ICE under President Barack Obama. Thank you so much for being here. Sometimes when you read these stories, we have to just talk to people like you who are experts and figure out what the heck is going on and what's normal. So let me ask you this. As former acting director of ICE, what on earth do you make of spending almost $500 million on planes for deportations and then not only not using them for deportations when that is your goal, but leaving most of them parked at an airport?
Well, Jim, the fact they're parked at the airport doesn't surprise me, right? ICE has never maintained its own fleet of aircraft. The analysis has always been that it's just much more efficient to rely on charter aircraft. So even during the first Trump administration and throughout ICE's history, you rely on these charter aircraft and commercial flights to execute those removals. So this kind of concept in the beginning was always, when I first heard about it months ago, it was a real head scratcher. Why would they want to do this? When you build your own fleet of aircraft, you can't operate them when they're broken down. When you charter, you can just get another aircraft from from the charter company. ICE doesn't have pilots. ICE doesn't have maintenance crews, all the expenses that go with it. So, again, but then you top it off, just to finish off, 3 of these are luxury jets, right? And at DHS, the head of ICE, the head of Customs and Border Protection, really the head of all the component agencies fly commercial. They fly commercial and they fly in coach. And so, again, I think this is what happens. This is what happens, though, when you give $170 billion and at the same time you defang the oversight apparatus that keeps this kind of spending in check, right? You defang the IGs and you eliminate, Congress eliminates its oversight responsibility. Having worked in an agency, I know you worked in an agency, you make these decisions recognizing I better be able to defend this to Congress. And when that oversight responsibility is gone, I think you get things like this.
No question. Let me ask you about an aspect of that, because oversight and spending, and the reason there's no bid contracts is to ensure that you're getting the most efficient contracts for the American public's money. And as I mentioned, this urgency exemption accounts for nearly 2/3 of the $34 billion that DHS has spent on contracts in 2026, up astronomically, I would note, from 2024 when it was less than 1%. Talk to us about how rare those kinds of contract exemptions are. How rare were they during your time at ICE?
Oh, incredibly rare, Jen. I mean, these are only for kind of emergency situations where you have something popped up, a COVID-19 or a hurricane hit somewhere, and you have to kind of scramble where all of a sudden you go, a new requirement, right? And so they were incredibly, incredibly rare. But again, this is a byproduct, too, of this kind of just similar to what we're seeing in ICE generally, where the administration not only is looking to spend this $170 billion that was given to them for immigration enforcement writ large, but also like in the hiring, right, where they're trying to double up. They want to do this before the end of the current Trump administration, recognizing this money might not be spent, right, in some future administration. And so, again, when you're swimming in this much cash, the temptations are so great. And when no one's looking over your shoulder, unfortunately, this is the outcome.
Why do you think, this is maybe a hard question to answer, but why do you think they're leaning on them? I mean, what questions would you have for this administration about why they're doing so many no-bid contracts and so many exemptions?
Jenna, I think this has to be investigated by the Inspector General. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, right? I mean, you only do this if you want to hand off a contract to a vendor with whom you have a prior relationship or you want a reward for some reason. You do this maybe if you just don't want to deal with the bureaucracy of going through the formal procurement process, which admittedly can take time. But again, when you look at a purchase like this, right, the ostensible justification they provided was to execute the president's mass deportation. And that might be a legitimate justification if that's really what this was about. But as I said earlier, look, just buying the planes is not enough. You got to hire pilots, get them on board, make sure they're trained. And meanwhile, ICE is using and continuing to use this charter fleet that is available to it. Again, I think that the only answer here is an investigation into what was driving all of these. And I guarantee you, Jen, this is probably not the only really questionable contract we're going to hear about. I think this is probably the tip of a much larger iceberg.
I think there could probably be many dozens of investigations into what ICE has been doing under this administration and in many regards. John Sandvik, thank you so much for being here and talking to us.